Good morning to you, or whatever time of day it is when you're watching this. It's morning here at the moment, but welcome back to some live sessions on the channel. We're going to be doing these for a few weeks, kind of leading up to it here. Yeah, we're just working. We're working through some stuff here. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a live session straight out of my Fretboard Freedom ebook, which is what I'm teaching on again as well today. If you're a member on my site, you would have got an email with this ebook in there already. But if you're not, make sure you go click the link in the description here and get the ebook so that you can work through the stuff. There's like hours and hours worth of material absolutely free to be able to kind of work through and for you to be able to kind of play along with. And that's what I'm teaching on. A couple weeks ago, and I'll link this just below. Hey, how's it going, guys? I'll link just below this as well, the first video in this series. That way you can kind of get caught up. But to get started, let's just talk about what's going on here, all right? So the first part of that I taught a few weeks ago was all about like how to use pattern 1 and 2 of the E minor pentatonic just a little bit more musically, all right? So like I said, I'll put a link below so you can watch that one before. But I want to go into no man's land today, all right? I'm calling it no man's land because almost everybody can kind of have a pretty good understanding of pattern 1 and 2, okay? So like by pattern 1 and 2, just so you can see it on screen, I'll share screen with you, is literally this is your pattern 1, right? And you know that scale, right? That's the open position version of it, right? And then the next one here is pattern 2. Right? So both of these scales are like the easiest and quite frankly where most of the money is being made when you hear guitar solos, all right? So it's because they're so easy to kind of get going, right? And to make it musical, okay? So let me see. So yeah, when you're thinking about it in this way, almost everybody kind of gets the idea that they can go. And that's kind of what I taught on a couple weeks ago. And like I said, I'll put a link to that description below. But let's go to no man's land. No man's land to me is shapes 3 and 4 of the minor pentatonic. All right. So if you know shape 1 and you know shape 2, well, shape 3, and I'll show you what it is here. And I'll pull up the tab here in a second. This is kind of no man's land to me. Right? Some of this anyways. And then shape 4 kind of feel that way as well. Right? And it's because shape 1 and 2 are just so much easier to get some stuff going in, right? Why that is, I'm not sure. It could really be, that's the first ones you learn. It could be that's where a lot of solos are played. So when you first start learning solos and licks, you're learning them in those shapes. If you have a theory on that, let me know in the chat right there. By the way, thanks to all the members that are already in here watching. And if you're not a member, it's okay. Enrollment for my All Access Pass will be open again in February. So check this out. We know this, so let's go into no man's land here, all right? These feel like no man's land for even intermediate guitar players, and it's because they just feel strange. So let's take a look at these shapes here. And we'll learn how to make these two shapes sound more musical with just a couple of ideas today, and that's kind of what we're getting at, all right? So that's the main point of today's session is how do we take these shapes that are a little less than a little confusing to play in some ways and a little bit like, maybe just feel like no man's land, right? How do we make these feel more natural, right? And the first way to do that is just to play the crap out of them, all right? There is no workaround for just hard work. So let's take a look at this really. And I'm going to show you how to turn these shapes into actual music and not just patterns, all right, today. So if we look at shape 3, this is what we're looking at right here. All right, so like we've got right here is our shape. All right, so wow, my watch is trying to talk to me. So let's take a look at this. You're right. You're right. A lot of people do just talk about positions 1 and 2, which is why I want to make sure everybody gets into positions 3 and 4 and 5, right? We got to be able to nail them all. Now, it's quite possible that it's just easier in the other positions, and it is in some ways. And this is a constant battle for me as well, which is why I'm kind of preaching and talking on it for a little bit here today. So we've got pattern 3. And we're going to learn what shape of the E minor. Since this is an E minor, we might as well learn, what is the pentatonic shape that we're outlining, or what is the scale shape that we're outlining right here. And quite frankly, it's just a C minor triad. You could say it's a C minor shape out of C minor cage, but that's kind of hard to play, so let's just play the triad and actually make it, doable, as opposed to some sort of insane finger exercise. So play through this with me if you've got your guitar. We're just going 5 to 7, 5 to 7. There's your E root. Remember, this is E minor pentatonic. 5, 7, shift back, 4, 7, shift up, 5, 8, and then 5, 7. So one of the key things you need to know to make these musical is where's your roots, right? You got an E here, and you got an E here. So here's an E, and here's an E, okay? So you've got to be able to say, right there. So there's an immediate way to kind of make that musical and add a little vibrato. So you're thinking 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, back to 5, and then land on 7. Right? And you can go slow. You don't have to play fast like I'm playing. Right? You can just go like... So, like, you can play, like... There's a lot of things you can do here to just make this sound musical. And just play with it around the roots. That's why you need to know where these roots are, okay? So, like... First, you got to have the scale memorized, right? So, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. That is the most musical or most usable part of that scale, right? And then 4, 7, 5, 8... 5, 7, that's kind of your no man's land. But we know the scale now. You're going up 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 4, 7, 5, 8, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 4, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5. And then here's the triad that fits that. Right? It doesn't do us any good to just play the pentatonic scale if we don't know where some chords are around it. Right? So we need to know where the E's are. 7th fret, 5th string, 5th fret, 2nd string, can't talk. And this first bit is the part, admittedly, that I use the most because it's just 5, 7, 5, 7, which I can do index to ring, index to ring, index to ring. Pretty simple, right? That part's kind of easier to kind of navigate. Messing up, buddy. Right, so you've got that. The no man's land part of it is the 4 to 7, 5 to 8. So you have got to get way more comfortable with this than you already are right now, right? So no matter how much you practice this, you can practice it more, all right? So a couple approaches that I take to this are just play it as a warm-up, alternate picking, right? Know where your chord is around it, that triad, which is 7, 5, 4 off the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string, G, E, G, B. There's another one here, B, E, G, right? So that's 7, 5, 4, E, G, B, or an inversion of that, B, E, G. That's 5th in the bass. Right there. Either way, you know where your triad is or your chord shape that fits this whole pentatonic. And I bet you've never thought of it that way before, all right? So we want to know that. So think about that, okay? Now, you've got to be able to have this so memorized that you don't have to think about it anymore. So once you can play it up, practice stopping on the roots. Right? And then play short little passages of 5-note sequences. So like 6-note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then then go back to the 5th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you keep going up the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's like going sequences of 6. It forces you to memorize it based off different start points. 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7 off the 5th string. 5, 7, 5, 7, 4, 7 off the 4th string. Off the 3rd. And then back down. All right, you've got to get a little bit better at this scale. Now, admittedly, this is the easier part to kind of jam over right here. All right, so if I was going, let me loop that again. So if I was going, if I'm right here, this part's easier. And you could loop just an A and an E or a blues. And just focus on landing on the roots. And I don't do anything crazy. I'm just using hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, stuff like that. So there's your first scale. Action steps on that first scale. Make sure it's actually memorized. Get your fingering right. Right? And then do some sequences of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Back to the 5th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3rd string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then do the same thing on the way back down. Focus landing on the roots and just playing around those roots over like a little E minor or an E blues backing track. Even if it's simple. We got to make these stop feeling like no man's land. Okay, so there's that one. All right, so if you have any questions on these, drop them in, and then I'll kind of focus on answering those as I get a little bit further in here. So now, let me refer to my notes real quick here. So, like I said, there's a reason that these shapes feel like less than comfortable. They just don't fit under the hand as much. And the other thing as well, in some of them anyways, and then the other thing is we just aren't practicing them enough because they do feel uncomfortable. So we have to get over that and just practice them even if they don't feel great, right? You have to practice them to the point where, and even I do this, you don't have to think about them anymore, all right? And the fingering can be a problem there as well, all right? So that's one of the big things. If you hit shape 3 and 4 and you lose confidence, then you need to make sure you focus on these things, all right? You need to focus on the target notes as well. Like in this case, where's the E's and where's that E minor chord that's built into this, all right? So we've done shape 3. Let's take a look at shape 4, and then we'll get into applying a couple of licks over the top of these just to make it sound a little bit more, musical. So shape 4 is a little easier to kind of wrap your head around, but it still feels like no man's land to a lot of guitar players, all right? So, like I said, if you guys have any questions, just drop them in there. Okay, so now this shape here that I'm looking at on screen, by the way, if you're watching this later and you want a copy of this full ebook, that link is in the description below. Everything I'm teaching is straight out of this. All right, so all we're thinking about here is, like, what's our next shape and what chord fits it. And a lot of guys don't teach this, right? All right, we know the pentatonic shape, but what's the point of knowing the shape if we don't know what chord it's kind of outlining? In this case, an E minor in the A minor shape, if you're thinking caged. Okay, so you got 7, 10, 7, 10, 7, 9, 7, 9, 8, 10, 7, 10. Alternate picking if you're ready for that. And you want to know where your roots are. In this case, 7th fret of the 5th string, 9th fret of the 3rd. These also aren't doing you any good whatsoever if you don't, like, thanks, man. You have to do that. You definitely didn't need to do that, but I appreciate it, man. Yeah. So here's the deal: is like if you can play this, you want to focus on where the roots are, right? If we don't know where the chord is that you're outlining underneath the pentatonic, that's a problem. If you don't know where your roots are, then you're definitely gonna noodle, right? So the scale, I'm going index, pinky, index, ring, middle, pinky on that second string, index, pinky, right? And here's a trick that I always use. When the root is there, even when I was back on pattern 3 right here, I'm always doing that G up from that E, or like that second note out of that shape right here, 7 to 10. I'm almost always doing a little bend on that back to that root and then doing a little vibrato. All right? It just sounds right because it is right. So you need to focus on that. So if we go back to shape 3, I'm just kind of going ad lib now. So look, if we did this, here's your G and here's your root. You got to go. If this is our scale, there's your G, there's your root. You need to focus that. And maybe go below the root. 5, 5, 7. Right? How many licks is that out of song? You can do it here. You want to find where that note is on the root, then find the next note in the pentatonic up, little bend, and do a vibrato on the root. You do it here, 8th fret, 2nd string. There it is again. There's your G into that E. And a little bend and a little vibrato goes a long way. Better to use the pinky on shape 3. I do to go 4 to 7 and 5 to 8. But if the stretch feels okay, it's whatever's comfortable. I use it, but like when I'm getting into speed, I'm probably going to go back to the ring finger. But you got to be able to use both. I say you got to get that pinky in there and start using it. So now I got off topic a little bit. Let's go back to this. So you've got 7, 10, 7, 10, 7, 9, 7, 9, 8, 10, 7, 10. You got to take the same approach here. Know where your roots are. Know what chord you're outlining. E minor. And then play with notes above and below the root. In this case, the G. And then vibrato. And then either a pull off or just a slide and a vibrato into your root. Right? A lot can be said if with a good vibrato and just knowing how to play with the root and a note below it, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? These have to be done. Now, next step, knowing, what already steps covered are scale shape, memorize it, alternate picking, know where your roots are, what chord you're outlining, and then do sequences of 6 again. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to the 5th string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4th string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3rd string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then back down. It's very Eric Johnson. Okay? And that's just forcing you to make sure you know the scale from different start points instead of just starting off the 6th string or just starting off the 1st string. Doesn't do us any good. You can get in the real habit of saying, I know this shape, but I got to start here. Well, no, you don't. You can start anywhere within the shape. You have to convince yourself of that and know them well enough to be able to do that. 7, 10, 7, 10, 7, 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the 5th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the 4th. To the 3rd. And then back down. Okay, so this is all well and good, right? And I'm giving you a couple of tips on how to make these sound more musical. And drop any questions you might have there below. I'll try to straighten this out. But we need to kind of apply a lick to these in some way or another. All right. So you can emphasize your roots and add bends and stuff like that by doing slides, full step bends, half step bends, strong note resolutions, in this case landing on the E, because we're not getting too deep into chord tone soloing today. And then the other thing is, let's take a look at these licks, all right? Let's take a look at a couple of licks that can really easily be applied here, all right? And this is kind of what you're really going for here, is can we make this stuff more musical? And to have a lick or vocabulary, in this case, that is the lick, vocabulary and lick, same type of a thing, and have it memorized, and then apply it to a music over like an E blues or an E backing track, E minor backing track, okay? You can choose either. So let's take a look at these licks. Before we get into it, think about just making these shapes way, way more comfortable, all right? Because these are, like, to me, the no man land shapes. There's ways to navigate through them. You know, that, like, diagonal pentatonic thing you see everybody teaching? And I'll teach on some of that at some point. But the only thing about that is, like, yeah, it's a way through the neck, but then you just do that every single time. When in the end of the day, you know, you can connect anything anywhere. There are some spots that are easier to connect than others. But anyway, so let's take a look at a couple of licks and see what we can do, all right? We're going to develop, and then at the end, I'll give you like a little practice plan here to kind of help you through some of these. So let's do the first lick is going to be just pattern 4 into pattern 3, all right? So our first lick is right here. Let me zoom a little. So your first one is basically straight out of Life in the Fast Lane. But it's combining these two ideas. Right? So our first lick, this is out of pattern 4, right? If we went up, our 8th fret 2nd string, I'm going to do a full step bend. Middle finger and my index are pushing at the same time. While that's up, my ring finger goes underneath here and grabs the 10th fret, okay? So like, while that bend is up, and then I go like that. So right here, middle finger on that, are we talking, if we're talking about the fingering of the scale all the way up and down, or the fingering of the actual lick? If we're talking about the finger of the lick, I'll give it to you. So we got middle finger on that 10th fret of the 2nd string, and then I'm bending that up with my index and middle, and then my ring finger on the 10th fret of the 1st string. There's like a delay in the chat. Sorry, guys. All right. And then I do that bend again like that. All right, so that's what I'm looking at here. Bend up, index and middle on that 2nd fret, on that 2nd string, 8th fret. My index is actually on the 9th fret, 2nd string, but it's just a support. So, and then ring finger underneath, 10th fret, 1st string. And then I do that bend again. And then 8th fret on that index, 2nd fret, or 2nd string, 8th fret, 2nd string. And then 9, 7, ring to index. 9, slide to 7. Now you're in pattern 3. That's 9 to 7. And then you pull off to 5 with your index. And then 7, there's your root of the 7th fret, 5th string. So it's, so I'm going to give you the fingering here again. So 10th fret with my middle finger and index supporting that bend on the 2nd string. Ring finger on the 10th fret 1st string while that bend is up, right? And then I do the bend again, 10 back down to 8. And then 9 to 7, ring to index on the 3rd string. 9, slide to 7, all ring on the 4th string. Pull off to 5, on the 4th string, and then 7th fret of that 5th string. So it's like, right? If you went, it's kind of a swingy rhythm, but it still works. And now all of a sudden you're making No Man's Land scales sound more musical. And you can just change the rhythm so you get more value out of each lick. And there I just finished on the 9 instead of going all the way down into shape 3. There I did the whole lick. There I just finished on the 9th fret 3rd string with my middle finger. So not terrible. So there's a lick right there. You got to have that into your playing, all right? So all I did was just like that. Middle finger, ring on the 1st string, bend again, middle finger, 8th fret with my index, 9, 7 on the 3rd string, that's E, D, and that's ring to index on that 3rd string, 9, that's a B, slide to 7, that's an A on the 4th string, that's your G, 5th fret 4th string, landing on the E, 7th fret 5th string. There's a lot of numbers there. All right, let's take a look at our next lick. This is going from pattern 3 and you end up in pattern 4. All right. Take a look at what's down here. All right. This is all in this ebook that's in the link in the description. Once you have the licks down, be sure to practice it with a backing track so you can apply these ideas to real music. This is a very important idea. So we know pattern 3, and then pattern 4. Right. So what we're going to do is take the easy parts of pattern 3, the easy parts of pattern 3 and the easy parts of pattern 4 and put them together. Okay, so these are the easy parts of pattern 3 to me. And then this is kind of like the easier part to get a lick out of pattern 4. All right, so let's just do what makes most sense and find the spots that are easier to make something cool happen. All right, so if we go 5, 7, index to ring on the 5th string, 5, 7, index to ring on the 4th string, immediately slide to 9 on the 4th string. So, right, this is your diagonal pentatonic idea. That's going below the root, 2 notes, and then on the next string, 5, 7, 9. So it's like 2, 3, 2 notes, then 3 notes sequence. 2 notes, then 2 notes, because we're coming back down. So 5, 7, index to ring on the 5th string, 5, 7, index to ring on the 4th, slide to 9 with your ring, 7 on the 3rd string with my index, 9 to 7 pull off on that ring finger to the index on that 3rd string. And then I did 10 to 8. I'm doing my pinky. This is tricky. 10 to 8, pull off on the 2nd string, 9, 7 on the 3rd string, ring to index, 8th fret, 2nd string, and then landing on the 9th fret of the 3rd string, and there's your whole lick. So it's there's the whole thing. I should have played the lick first. All right, let's do that again. So that is a great exercise in using the No Man's Land versions of the pentatonic, areas of the pentatonic. I added something extra there, but so that one's a good one, and you can shorten that lick, right? You don't have to go. You just go. So all I did there was here, 9 to 7, 8th fret, and then landed on 9. I'm just taking different, variations of these licks, and that way I can have 6 licks or 3 licks built out of just one. Right, that's a variation. There's a variation. There's the actual lick, right? So we have the actual lick. I'll play it the correct way. And then you do variations of it. Maybe you just go right over that backing track. Full lick. Right? So, yeah, what I'm saying is you can do different versions of this. Like, I'm giving you a full lick, but you can get a lot of mileage out of these. I'll get to those questions in a second, Allison. But, like, because when you do that, then you're like, oh, I'm dissecting this lick and I have more things to play. You don't have to learn 800 licks. If you learn one lick like this or 2 like I've given you today, and you just break them apart, you got a lot. Watch. Not bad. I'll do that again. It was just a shorter version of the same thing. What if I started up high and I went? And what if I come down? Right, because if you think about this lick, you already came down, you went, right? So if you can combine ideas from this with ideas of this, you've got easily 10 different kind of riffs that you can like string together, or licks that you can string together, okay? So like the idea, right, there's that one, and then you got the second lick here. Right, those are kind of long, so what if you combine, right, pieces of that? That was a piece of both. And then what if I went, right, that's just a piece of that second lick. There's a piece of that second lick as well. So I think a lot of times people are like really overthinking these concepts, because like you can learn one lick and shorten it and break it up into like 2 to 4 to 5 different licks, right? And you can make these scales feel like less of the no man's land and more of like the, where you can feel comfortable, right? If you're really trying to get it to where you can feel comfortable all over the neck, you got to figure out a way to use even pieces of each of these scales, right? There are parts of these scales that are kind of no man's land because they just feel weird. But if you can figure out how to combine them to make them feel better, in this case, shapes 3 and 4, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. So let me take a look at what fingers are using. I think I told you that. Transitioning from 9 to 7, 10 to 8. Oh. 9 to 7, I'm going ring to index. 10 to 8, I'm going pinky to middle. And a lot of people don't like to use that pinky. Right? But like, I think the more you use it, the better you're going to be off with it. So it's like, now it feels weird. I know exactly which part you're talking about there, Allison, but 9 to 7 on the 3rd string, sorry. And then pinky to middle on that 2nd string, 10 to 8. But you could use your ring and index on both. Just feels like a lot of energy it's hard to get that smoother to me. To me, you're already in position to go 9 to 7, pull off, ring to index, pinky to middle finger, 10 to 8. It's kind of hard to do it back to back, but okay, so there's that. So we've covered a lot today so far. We've covered like basically how to make shapes 3 and 4 feel less like no man's land and how to make the music. First of all, you got to make them. You got to have them memorized. You got to be able to play them up and down and know where your roots are. Figure out what triad you're outlining. In this case, an E minor triad. We did that on shape 3. On shape 4, we did the same thing. Memorize the shape, know where your roots are, know what triad or chord shape you're outlining, right? In this case, when we were here, it was the E minor, but in the A minor shape. Right here. You got triads built into that. We're not going to get into those today. And then I'll get to that in a second there, Allison. But like the idea here is to say, all right, you know where the shape is, you know how to play it up and down, where are the roots, what triad you're outlining. Do a sequence of 6. Kind of an Eric Johnson exercise. Forces you to know the scale even better. Landing on a root eventually. And then do that on both, and then have a lick that you can kind of dissect. Both of these licks there were only 2 licks. But if you kind of dissect them both and have something to play in both areas, you can probably, out of both of those licks, break those out and shorten them and make them 10 licks. You know, I'm almost certain, even if they could be simplified, but we're overthinking how many licks we need. You learn 1 lick, you can make variations of it 10, 20, 30 times, right? So think about that and keep it in mind. So like a mini practice plan for this type of thing would be run the shape, identify where the roots, where the triad is, play the lick, right? Run shape 4, know where your roots are, know where your triad is within that, or chord shape. In this case, it's E minor. Then you can do sequences of 6 of both, right? And then put on a backing track and try to play the lick that I gave you, right? There's 2 different licks. And then just try to free flow over the top of it yourself, right? I'd love to see a video of this stuff if you want to post it either in the private community for the paid members or just on Facebook or Instagram and tag at Summit Guitar School. I'd love to see that as well. And then, spend a few minutes in each of these shapes more than you normally would, because that's how you're going to get the most value out of this stuff. And you're never going to get comfortable in shapes that you don't spend time practicing in. All right? So basically, know the shape, memorize it, find your chord tones, find the triad that you're outlining or cage shape. Sequences of 6, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do. And then play over a backing track, right? You can either do the lick, which you should do. There's 2 of them here. Or you just kind of free flow over it, landing on the roots. That's 5 steps that you could take. It's up to you to take action and actually do some of those steps. But that I can't help you with. I can only help you with motivating you and giving you the steps you need to take. So mission today was make shapes 3 and 4, no man's land scales, feel more like music and less like a mystery section of the fretboard. I think we've done that, all right? Next episode, we'll finish up with pattern 5, and then we'll get into the next section. Oh, gosh, here we go with AI. So, and then we'll get into the next section of the ebook. But this is great stuff. You want to make sure you copy the ebook. The link is in the description. And then I'll answer a couple questions right now. And if you want to be part of the paid community where I go live all the time and people are in there, then make sure you get on the wait list. That's on my website. Enrollment is not open right now, but it's all access pass. Lifetime membership, it will open again in February. So let's see what we've got here. So Allison, what did you say? Thanks, and I'm fine. Yes. It's easy to think about what shape you're in. I don't think about the shape anymore. I just kind of, I'm going through things. I'm just kind of going through them, and I kind of know where I'm at. So it really, all that's telling you is that you just need to keep running these. All right, thanks, Shizzle Sticks. You have to keep running these, right? Until they feel more natural. In a way that you can make that more natural feeling across the fretboard is to have more licks to play, or riffs, or licks, I'd say. Little solo lines that connect these, all right? I'll give you guys some tools in the community on how to kind of connect these a little bit more. There's a million ways you can do it. There's a couple concepts that work really well that you've probably seen online and stuff like that, but Bill Alvarez. I don't have a specific backing track for this, but you can get a backing track for free on YouTube if you just look up E blues backing track or E minor backing track. I have some that I usually do for certain lessons. This one doesn't have a provided backing track. If you're in the community, message me on there and I'll give you some more as well. But I like to just go to YouTube. Yeah, they're all relative to one another. I like to just go on YouTube and say, hey, give me an E blues backing track I can jam over. And I go through and there's like 100 of them. I just find the one I think sounds good. Or E minor backing track if I want something more minor-y sounding, like as opposed to kind of a funky thing. That's what I would do. And then just you have a million free backing tracks at your disposal right there. But if you want more of that type of stuff, I do create custom backing tracks for a lot of my lessons and for a lot of the member stuff as well. But I'm hoping this is helpful for you guys. Yeah, John, where are you at? John Clinton, thanks for being here. All those shapes, yeah, they're all relative to one another, and Allison, it's all about finding the connecting points, right? And there's no mystery behind the connection points. You just got to be able to say, here's pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 1. But I would say that sequence of 6 thing can really help. And then doing even sequences like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go to the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and kind of moving through shapes back and forth, just seeing how closely related they all are, because they're all related and they're all relative to one another. There's 5 shapes. You just have to practice them enough to where you don't have to think about them anymore. And applying this stuff to music is really where it's at. So make sure you try to apply everything to some sort of backing track. Even if you think it sounds bad, record yourself playing, post it in a community here, and all of that. Yeah. Or post it on Facebook and just let others hear it. Even if you're not in my paid community, you got to be posting things for people to hear or like sending it to friends so they can hear it. These things keep you accountable and keep you moving on your guitar goals. Homework, learn the scales a little bit better. Memorize them up and down the neck. These are shapes 3 and 4. Find your root notes. Find the triad or the cage shape that fits it, in this case, E minor. You can run sequences of 6 with alternate picking to get more proficient at these and just to increase your fretboard knowledge and, really cement these patterns into your head. Learn the licks, apply them to a backing track, and then all these steps, and then just jam over the top of it and hold yourself accountable to staying within those 2 shapes that are kind of no man's land. All right. So that's it for today. See you in the next one. I'll come live. I'll go live again next week. I appreciate you being here. If you're a community member, I appreciate you even more for stopping by, even though you didn't have to. So Shape 5 is coming next. I'll do Shape 5 in the next week and then start in on the next section. But I appreciate